Hi everyone and welcome to this overview of the BWP 2000. It is unlocked at rank 30 of the battle path, and it very much functions like a warrior without any of the armor, but with absolutely monstrous amounts of firepower. It has a mini Draco cannon, 200 damage, 320 pen, 9,300 damage per minute, 5.91 second reload. It has a pair of Ingray missiles, which are basically half the firepower of the VBL Ingray, and that's about it. Its armor is shocking, its mobility is okay, it's, generally speaking, let's compare it to the other IFEs of the same tier to let you get an idea of what it's about. So, generally speaking, out of the gate, it has the highest damage out of all of them, 200, 320 penetration for an autocannon is amazing. It has the highest penetration of an autocannon, well, the second highest penetration in the game. It does have a clip, but it has a clip of 16 rounds. And most of the time you won't be firing those rounds either. However, its hit point value is shockingly low, 2000. In terms of frontal armor, it has roughly about 100, so it's not going to keep out heat rounds, it's not going to keep out missiles, and you're going to get buttered by everybody, especially by autocannons, so it literally has no arm whatsoever. However, for a track vehicle it is reasonably quick, and the top speed is just enough to get you out of the harm's reach of MBTs, but you will be chased down by light tanks and killed very quickly. Camouflage value is not that great as an AFE, same well stopped, and keep in mind these two only have telescopic lenses and not augmented optics, so, and the gun depression is kind of there at best. So looking at the armor scheme for this, generally speaking you can see here it's not that great at all. 84, 140mm at the front, you're going to get buttered by heat rounds and pen just about every day. You have no armor basically. You do have a choice of different missiles however, but it's quite strange in how it's done. So you don't select your missiles in the ammo screen, you in fact select it like this. So you either get a pair of missiles that the VBL TOW gets, which are very heavy hitting, but 630 pen is not even good for tier 6, and it's basically trash for tier 7. So unless you're playing PvE, I strongly recommend taking the Ingray ADGMs, as they're fast, they're punchy, they're reliable, and they have 750 pen, which is just enough to get you through. This is a very weird tank. It can't snipe because of the missiles, it only gets 2 of them, it can't do mid-range, and it can't brawl, so it functions as this very weird hybrid of a vehicle. Now, fortunately the aiming issues for this tank have been fixed, so in the gameplay footage I'm about to show you, all of the times you see the gun going off to the side, left and right, it's not going to happen. Apart from that, like I said before, 320 pen with a mod, 750, 20mm for the HE. It's not actually that terrible really. It will go through the engine decks of MBTs and it will allow you to absolutely butter AFEs and the like. It also has an engine override, which is actually very good and the only one it gets. Spare parts crate, first aid cabinet, the usual, and I recommend going full spotter on this one. Electro absorbing paint with Erin, that's a 16% with the special agent. Telescopic lenses, and of course augmented optics for the view range. Apart from that, crew wires for the driver. I recommend off-road driving and smooth ride for the accuracy on the move. You will be using that autocannon a lot. And finally, accuracy and possibly preparation or module damage. It's up to you really on that one. There's a choice of only 3 real commanders I will take. Erin O'Connell for the spotting meta, and I strongly recommend taking her in all game modes. Apart from that, there is also Sabrina as well. And at last, if you really want to do maximum damage in PvE, you can always take, of course, the meme man himself, Alexander Cortez, who I can never really figure out where he is on this map. Where is he? And besides, they're up on the screen anyway. So that's just about everything done for this really. Let's jump into some games and see how this thing performs. There's going to be one good game and one relatively average one. So I am on Coastal Threat with my good friend Jeff in the Challenger, and I am the only BWP here I believe. So out of the gate I have the ability to penetrate the vast majority of the enemy team, except of course for the 2AV, and pretty much all of their MBTs. So in a straight fight this thing's autocannon is actually very powerful indeed, and most of the time it functions more of the primary weapon, especially in tier 9 games where you're able to pen the side armor of MBTs from long range, while in a lot of cases the missile is not. The missiles fire very much out to the side, and they can be a little bit finicky to use at times, so let's rise up a bit. Now, generally speaking, the damage of this game is going to be in two phases. There will be a lot of damage done to a Stingray, which I very invite you to look at, as it is absolutely hilarious, and the second one will be just about overall, really. So the missiles fly relatively quite fast, and they're pretty decent. They're not terrible. The VBL in Grey gets away by having 4 of them, this only has 2. So watch that Stingray over there for the memes that will happen. Now, unfortunately, I'm not going to really be able to show you how the cannon operates in this one, as in this version this is with the unfixed aiming bug, so the targeting would actually lock onto hitboxes of terrain and vehicles, which made it quite difficult to shoot at enemies. However, the raw firepower was, generally speaking, quite enough to be able to dump on people. So that Stingray is going to pop up, and it's going to be absolutely hilarious, because this is going to be for the autocannon only, I believe. Stingray soon. And apart from that, this thing's gun depression and everything quite sucks. For something that relies on its autocannon so heavily, it isn't the greatest in the world. Hey Stingray, how's it going? Watch this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1400 damage done just like that. If you're in a lightly armoured vehicle, you do not want to get close to one of these. And that's going to be that damage done for a while. This thing generally does its damage in bursts, generally speaking. It's not something that you're going to want to be in a long drawn out fight with somebody with. You get in, you dump that autocannon, or you dump the missiles. Bob's your uncle, Charlie's your aunt, that's how it goes. This functions very much like... I can't really say it really. There's not an AFE in the game that really operates like this. Most of the time AFEs that are basically dump and shoot are stuff like the V-Balls, the Ontos, the Crab. And this isn't like any of those, because unlike those, this thing's primary armament is its autocannon, and another AFE's which primary armament is its autocannon is stuff like the Mortar 2, but the Mortar 2 takes longer to deal damage, and the Sphinx of course operates at long range, while this thing usually needs to be relatively close to be able to do things. So that's the thing, generally speaking. And it can be quite difficult to use this thing, as the lack of armor, the lack of speed, the lack of camo, even with Erin it's not really that great, can make this a relatively difficult vehicle to play. But aside from that, I have had fun playing it, and I would actually recommend, well, it's on the battle path, so regardless, if you want the Object 490, you're going to get this. So what am I saying? So anyway, it's not that terrible of a tank. For new players it may be difficult, especially if you're not used to AFE such as this, as the raw firepower of this thing, as discussed in my Ontos overview on Wednesday, can lead you to making quite a lot of mistakes with this thing and overestimating yourself potentially. So at this point in time I'm gonna simply move up to there. Now this thing's autocannon is very unique in how it plays. I did hit Jeff unfortunately, not a hit on those. However, this does come with engine boost, which can come into play quite a few times, but for now we're simply going to have to move off. So I'm going to move into a covering position for Jeff, which is something you can do with a lot of AFEs in the game, but a lot of those AFEs, most of the time there's a long downtime between how much damage they can do. This does not. There's 5 seconds during which you can switch to those missiles, and during the missile reload obviously you can use the autocannon. So let the damage begin. 1. Okay, I miss. Who cares? 1, 2. Yeah, okay, fine. We'll shoot the Challenger instead. Hey, Charlie, how's it going? Shoot the K1 instead. Hey. And thanks to those pair of missiles, you can put those in, and then you can back off. And that Centauro over there, and due to the fact this has a high, powerful shot punch, unlike other AFEs, which usually do 100, which usually do 50 or more, I can erase that Centauro in 1 hit. Quite amusing how hilarious you can get this thing doing damage. So I've just done an extra of 4,000 damage with this relatively short amount of time. Kill him, and that's the end of the game. So let's move on to another one. So this is very much going to be another game like the previous one. Lots of damage done. well, relatively for an AFE player. Most of the time, the AFEs will usually tend to do at least more than a damage in hit points due to the large amount of firepower. This is going to be a pretty decent game. It's not going to be anything spectacular. A spectacular or a legendary game in my example is doing 8,000 damage plus. Generally speaking, you want to usually do around 3,000 in an AFE such as this, so try to do at least 1.5 times your hit points and damage, due to the fact that you have pretty decent DP and everything. So, good. We're going to be able to see everything that's going on. So, relatively slow start for this game, I believe. It's 10 minutes long, and as many of you have probably figured out on Ghost Field, they're either really short or they're really long. So, and there's usually quite a bit of downtime involved. So, I am going to be making use of engine boost at this time, and also more of the long range firepower of this one. So, as you can imagine, playing an AFE on this map, just about anything that isn't an MBT, can be intensely frustrating simply because the long sight lines are good, but the fact that the cover is so clumped together, and the fact that usually teams either go top or they go bottom, is something to be frustrated about. However, please do not fear, this game is going to be quite fun. So Merkava 3 Baz over there, and as you can see, the missiles do quite a fun bit of damage. And unfortunately the penetration is enough to do that, and as you can see there, the left missile, the missiles do not fire out of the gun, they fire out of the missile tubes themselves. So overall speaking, the firepower can be a bit shit. Now, another hit on that guy there, and of course excellent damage per shot on there allows me to finish off that Merkava relatively quickly. So that's pretty decent, whereas an autocannon would have needed a significantly more amount of time. However, that RCR did land a heat shell on me, but fortunately nothing much happened on that. And as you can see there, due to the missiles do have some issues hitting things, but that's relatively okay, I think. So let's see what's happened in the rest of them. So there's a Stingray 2 over there and everybody else. This is a pretty perfect sniping opportunity on this one. And I should have switched to the autocannon at that point because I could have done a very good amount of damage to that guy. But unfortunately it doesn't quite happen. And there's there, 205. Ooh, hey Stingray. And as you can see here, the penetration allows me to hit MBTs on their side armor, such as that. And generally speaking, the only MBT armor in this game that's going to have problems with me with my autocannon is going to be the Leopard. Well, the Leopard Revo, simply because that extra spaced armor is going to give issues. Now that 9910 probably believes I'm actually facing the opposite direction, which is a pretty fair assumption to have, generally speaking, but I don't really care. Pretty nice amount of damage done so far, and as you can see, the long range firepower of this thing, it is quite nice. Not to mention the fact you can hit MBTs at long ranges with the autocannons, which unlike the Mulder and the Rosamax, which rely on dealing multiple successive shots, you can get away with doing one or two and still dealing around 300 to 400 damage, especially with Cortez, but that's not really recommended in PvP and Glops that much, simply because you lose out so much on your camo, you're going to stick out like a sore thumb and you're going to die very, very quickly. So Stingray over there, I would actually suggest using most of your autocannon over the missiles, because faster flight times, they generally speaking penetrate armor better when it's steel and stuff and side armor, and there's less downtime, and the fact you don't have to aim them, you just point, click, and the shot goes there. So unfortunately I do miss again on that Leopard 285, and we're going to speed the game up here quite a bit. So, as you usually know with this map, issues are usually had. So we're going to simply move up, because I'd like to invite you to that time in which I was telling you about doing too much, or thinking too highly of yourself, thinking that your burst damage is going to be really great when it isn't. Because this is going to be one of those games, and as you've known me by my previous stream yesterday, I have a habit of simply rushing into a position heads first. So, to take on this Leopard 24 Revo, I was under the understanding that he would have a longer reload, and I misjudged his reload, and in doing so, you can imagine how this is going to go. So basically, I believe he's fired at this point. I don't know. And, well, you can imagine how that's going to go. So, at this point, I should have gone for it. My engine boost is still there, and expectantly speaking, I do try to ram him, and I die. So that's not something you should ever be doing, and that is a screw up on my part. So, let's have a look at those post-game stats for an example of how those 2 games went. So as you can see here, for the first game that was shown, Coastal Threat did pretty well, 200 battle coins with the booster, 5k damage done. As you can see the ones here that hit with missiles, the ones that weren't. Also a hit on that, excuse me, on that Scorpion Caster is pretty decent, however he did kill me in the end. Highest damage done out of our team, and 3 kills, which is pretty nice as well. And as you can see here, this thing actually bounced damage. Very short amount of damage in quite a pretty decent time, which is actually quite nice. Now, the next one, which is the Ghostfield map, we won that, thankfully to the very talented VT4 operator over there who managed to kill that DO2 Revo. Really good high damage done that game as well, but as you can see there, that game could have done better maybe. Now, this thing does struggle when going up against heavily armoured MBTs, as when the order cannon isn't enough to hit them, and the penetration of the missile isn't quite that well. So learn from my mistakes. I do enjoy playing this vehicle, and I do recommend playing it. It's been a blast to play both PvE and PvP. I haven't played it in co-ops yet, but given the fact that most of the time you usually have more opportunities to deal damage, that's probably a better example than most people. So for now, thank you all for watching this overview. The Object 490 will be next, followed by all of the French tanks. So take care everyone, and of course, I'll see you all next time, I guess. Of course, I'll be streaming later today, Saturday and Sunday and Monday. So, bye for now, and see you then.